Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second session for the virtual conference for NMDEL. This webinar is Best Practices in Distance Learning with Cash Clifton. And as we wait for other people to join, if you can see on the slide, there's a tiny URL on the bottom of the slide. We ask that all participants log in and register for this particular conference. So we're going to give everybody a few seconds to start and get that taken care of, and then Cash will join us. Okay, again, if you're just joining us, please take a moment to go to the tinyurl.com/DeldVC2017 to register for this session. Just so all of you know, at the end of the conference, we'll be allowing 10 minutes for questions. And we'll also have an online chat going below the video on YouTube. So that'll be live, real time chat communication, and then we'll take live questions at the end. All right.
All right, well, good morning to those who are watching us live, and hello to those who might be viewing the recording after the fact. We are going to be looking today at best practices in distance learning. And I will tell you, this is a very, very broad topic. There is so much more than I could possibly cover during a 40-minute webinar. So we're just going to kind of scratch the surface. I'm going to look at a couple of things today. I'm going to look at resources where you can become more knowledgeable about best practices in distance learning. And then we're going to look at some vignettes. We're going to look at some case studies and see what's being done in adult education programs around the country. I will tell you, within a lot of the vignettes, they're using technologies and softwares that you're required to pay for. NMDEL is committed to connecting you with free resources. So as we look at some of the things that they are paying for in other parts of the country, I'll talk about how you can access these things for no cost through NMDEL and through some free. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is online versus hybrid or blended learning. So online courses, they don't meet face-to-face. It is entirely virtual through some sort of learning management system. Or blended learning is a combination of face-to-face and remote learning. And research is indicating very strongly that hybrid or blended learning is the way to go. It seems to be kind of difficult to reach students through purely online learning. It's kind of difficult to get them on task and keep them motivated. So because of that, I'm going to be focusing more on the concept of hybrid or blended learning. As far as the definition of hybrid or blended learning, there are some programs that are doing about 50-50, about half in class, about half online. There's programs doing splits that are more like 80-20 and really anything in between. So this is a relatively broad concept there again that we are talking about today. Best practice does indicate that it's a good idea to have proctored assessment, to have assessment in person. This might be something as simple as the TABE test for your program, but you do need to have some sort of plan in place where you can verify that this is the actual student doing the work and that they do the learning. Because one danger of distance learning is it's very easy for the student to get extra help, to get extra tutoring. That can be a good thing if the student is using it ethically, but you need to have some sort of system in place to determine that the student is actually doing the work themselves. So that's something to keep in mind through this. So organization is so important when you're doing distance learning. I think it's important in a face-to-face class as well, but you want to be sure you have some sort of standardized procedures so that the students know what's expected of them. This is typically done through a learning management system. Most of our colleges and universities tend to use Blackboard Learn, but the adult education programs don't always have access to this platform. It's a great platform, but it can be very, very pricey. Moodle is one option I've seen a lot of people using. Emoto is a learning management system that's catching on. NMDelt works with Google Classroom primarily. So if you don't have an nmdelt.org account already, I encourage you to get one. You can sign up for that through our website, nmdelt.org. And by having a nmdelt account, that's going to give you access to Google Classroom as a learning management system. As long as you're associated with an HED funded program here in the state, that will be at no cost to you. You will need to have the nmdelt account for yourself. You're also going to need to have an nmdelt account through us for your students so that they can access Google Classroom. But again, that is a free option for a learning management system, and I think it is quite good. We'll actually be taking a little closer look at Google Classroom in the 12 o'clock session. And we do have some webinars that already exist. We're seeing a lot of teachers do a class website as opposed to a learning management system. Google Sites, if you're not familiar with it, it's a really simple way to build your own website. And then that can be how you post assignments, expectations, that kind of thing. And then I'm seeing quite a few teachers nationwide that are just using plain old email. Don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel on this. If you're not familiar at all with the learning management systems, if you're not familiar with making a website, you can just email your student. Do mass emails to your, if you're doing that DC. Link to input their email addresses that will protect their privacy a little bit better. And I also suggest that you have sort of a standardized time for when you will email your students so they know what to expect. So for example, maybe send all of your assignments out Monday morning between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., something like that. Again, you just want consistency so the students can see what's expected of them. So that is very clear. So I'm gonna get out of my presentation here for just a second. I'm gonna come over here and open a new tab, and I'm gonna show you the NMDelt website. So this is nmdelt.org. And so if you want to request an NMDelt email account for you or your students, you just go to this little link right here on the left hand of your screen. I'm doing this from a PC, but this also works perfectly well in Apple products. You could do this from the browser in your mobile phone. And so I come over here to this link to request an NMDelt account. I click on that, and it's just going to take you to this form here that you fill out. You fill out the form, submit it, and the team will create an account for you, which will get you access to the entire G Suite for Education software package, of which Google Classroom. So again, if you haven't already, it's probably worth your time to create an account. I want to talk briefly about Quality Matters. Quality Matters is the ultimate guide to best practice in distance learning. It is such a very broad topic. It is possible to get certified in Quality Matters. I've been through that training process, and I found it excellent. I just want to show you their website really quickly. So if you do want to get certified through Quality Matters, there is a fee associated for that. You can also find at universities and community colleges courses that will train you and certify you in Quality Matters. And me an email, which I'll provide at the end of the session if you have more questions about it. So what I want to show you here in particular is the professional development that's available through Quality Matters. So I come over here and hover on professional development, and they have the certification online that you can do directly through them, but they also have a ton of free webinars. So I clicked that link right there, and there are just all kinds of webinars if you scroll through here, and it can really give you an idea of what best practice is there. So I encourage you to check out Quality Matters. Not already familiar with it. I have done classes that follow the Quality Matters rubric. I have done classes that don't follow the Quality Matters rubric, and I tend to have much happier students when I'm adhering closely to Quality Matters. A lot of it is about how you organize the class, how you set up the class, and just make things very, very clear for students. So I want to talk briefly about Netiquette, and this is the idea of defining your expectations for online interaction. So these are the 10 core rules of Netiquette. So I won't read those to you as they're displayed here on the screen. If you want to know more about them, just Google Virginia Shea's 10 core rules, and you will find lots and lots of information out there. You can also find through Delt webinars where we have done this more in depth. Really what this is about teaching your student about what's acceptable online and what's not acceptable online. It's about telling them how they can interact with their classmates through this process, and how they can interact with you as the teacher. At some of the emails that I get from my students that will start with something like, "Hey, what's up?" And I think this is a space to teach them some professionalism in terms of that. I've even had students in their emails to me with "love you," and that is just not acceptable. And so it's a place to define those boundaries. And I think students are used to interacting with technology through very informal messages. The student who said "love you" at the end of the email just had that as her standard signature line. Everybody she's sent to an email to, she says "I love you," and I said no, that's not acceptable to say to a teacher. It's also teaching the students the concept of online identity. So much of our world is going online, and this is a chance to teach students. Hey, that picture from the big party you went to that you posted on Facebook, that's all that's all well and good, but what happens when a potential employer Googles you and they find these kind of pictures? And so teaching them that, you know, what you post on the internet, it's out there, and you don't know who may be finding that later. So really teaching students what it means to be a respectful and professional member of the online community. So I want to take a look at some of the vignettes. So this is from Project Ideal. It was published in April 2015. If you would like to see the full publication, feel free to shoot me an email, and I can give you a link where you can see a copy of this. And so this is just kind of a look at what's happening in distance learning around the country. So we have our first adult education vignette. This is creating an ESL classroom online. Tell you guys now, I have limited information about these things. I have the information from the Project Ideal case study, but there are certain ones that shared more information than others, so I will answer questions with the information that I have available. So this ESL class, this took place in Pennsylvania, and the teacher identified that there are three main areas to the class. So there are live online classes. So my understanding is this is a class that's purely online. They do not meet face-to-face, but they do have synchronous webinars twice per week. They have independent practice expectations on Rosetta Stone. Oftentimes things like that, you can specify a minimum amount of time that the student needs to spend working with that tool. So created supplemental lessons when they felt that there was a need to go more in depth than what Rosetta Stone could provide. So they start every student out with a new student orientation, and this particular program uses Adobe Connect for their new student orientation. Now, Adobe Connect is a wonderful, wonderful program, but unfortunately it is an expensive program. So I'm going to suggest, if you want to do something like this, that you check out Google Hangouts. So our presentation today is being broadcast by Hangouts on Air. That goes through YouTube Live, but you can also use just plain old Hangouts, and that's at hangouts.google.com. If you get that nmdelt.org domain username email address, that is automatically going to give you access to Google Hangouts for something like Adobe Connect. They did Camtasia instruction. Camtasia is a pretty good program, but there again, it's something that you have to pay for. You may find that Google Hangouts, there again, is a great tool for video instruction. And there's several other tools available out there that you can record yourself with. And I want to refer you to an adult team member if you are needing help recording those kinds of things. This class for individual communication, they use email, text messaging, and Skype. So email, a Gmail is included within the nmdelt.org domain account, so that's an option for you. Skype, there again, Skype is a pretty good program, but I think Google Hangouts has all of the function that Skype does. Text messaging is a great option. I'm personally not always comfortable with giving out my private cell phone number to my students, so you can use Google Hangout for chat there. You can also use Google Groups, and there's a few other tools that function very much like a text message. The reason I like to keep my messaging confined to Google is that I'm able to turn off the ringers. I'm able to make myself unavailable. So where I've had in the past text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can control that more through the Google tools. And then this class is also using the Moodle learning management system. Pretty solid platform. NMDELT does recommend the Google Classroom learning management system if you're looking at using that. They're also using a program called VoiceThread to practice pronunciation. So that is our first vignette. That's just one model of how distance education is being used in adult education. So let's move on to our next one. So this next case study is based in Phoenix, Arizona, and they're looking at how to develop independent learning skills. And from what I read, it sounds like they're just trying to instill a love of lifelong learning and teach students that getting your HSE is not necessarily the end of your education journey. This program, they do 50% of their content in Play-Doh. Play-Doh is a program that has lots and lots of curriculum. There are career-related things. There's math instruction. There's reading and writing things. There's just lots and lots of stuff in there. You do receive free access to Play-Doh through NMDELT, and that's free access for both you and your students. That is something that NMDELT is able to offer for you. So half of their content is based in Play-Doh. This particular teacher wanted something with a little bit deeper level of rigor, and so they go through course sites for supplemental material. If you're wanting to do something like course sites, you can get access to create a Google site for free. So again, I want to focus on how we can do these things for free. This is a class that sends assignments by email, and then the students turn around and submit their assignments by email. Now, this particular teacher has the students use Microsoft Word and Excel, and that's great if your students are coming onto campus and can use some of the campus computers. If a student is trying to use their own device, that can be a bit of a problem, though, because Microsoft Office is quite expensive. So Google does have Google Docs available. It's a similar program to Microsoft Word, and Google Sheets, which is a program similar to Excel. Those are free programs, so it can save the students from having to buy those Microsoft products, and they really have a lot of the same functionality as the Microsoft products. We will be doing a webinar at noon today that looks at these in more depth if you're interested in that. This program uses a classroom blog that requires student contributions. There are several blog sites out there that you can set up absolutely free for this kind of thing. Google Chat for synchronous activities. I'm not quite certain. They didn't say how frequently they schedule synchronous activities, but I got the impression that they use this this format much less than the previous program did. And they do have units on Netiquette and cyber safety. So from what I understand, that's sort of ingrained within the program, teaching them the Netiquette there again to be professional online, but also, you know, cyber safety. How do you protect your identity in our online world? And I think those are very important discussions to have. And this is primarily online. Here again, they were a little vague in terms of the face-to-face component, stating that students attend class occasionally, whatever that means. And they're using class, it sounds like rather informally. They use it for math games, jigsaw readings, and they have the students break into small group PowerPoint presentations. There again, PowerPoint is a Microsoft product that is relatively pricey. So Google Slides is a free product that you're available to use. And if I hit escape, see that I'm working in Google Slides rather than PowerPoint. In terms of function, it is very, very similar. We have our third case study. This is out of Minnesota, and this is preparing students for college. So I understand these are students who have identified they have ambitions to continue at a community college or a university after receiving their HSE. So this is Mindquest. That is a program I'm not terribly familiar with, but the writers in this case study highly recommend it, and they said this is college preparation material. So you might check out Mindquest. If you're interested in that kind of thing, do keep in mind here in the state of New Mexico that we have Plato, we have Career Ready 101. We have a few other options available to you. Speaking of Career Ready 101, we did have a presentation at 9 o'clock this morning going over that in depth. We have training videos on the website. So let me just get out of my presentation here. I'm going to open the NMDELT website. So here is nmdelt.org. You go up here and hover over NMDELT trainings, and right there you can see Career Ready 101. Our team has put together a series of videos that show you Career Ready 101. I think they're very high quality. So if you're interested in using that program, that's how you can learn more about that. So in this particular case study, they begin with an assessment to determine course placements. You know, do you want your studies in an introductory level? Do you want your students in a moderate level? Do you want them in an advanced level? And then they have a face-to-face orientation. The face-to-face orientation is where they get together with the students and they explore their goals. They look at maybe what are the students' career goals, and from there you could connect them to something like Career Ready 101 to give them basic skills for the career. You might look at academic goals there again if they're looking to continue their education. And that says persona is supposed to say personal goals. So they really seem to take a holistic look at the student. Occurs through email, text messaging, and a discussion forum. Google Hangouts is a great tool if you're interested in creating a free discussion forum. This particular site is not using social media, but they say that they hope to add Facebook and Twitter components to the class as well. Those can be great tools for connecting to your students. I particularly like to use Facebook for my classes because most of my students are already on Facebook. And so this is a way to connect with them through a platform that they're already comfortable with. Something they do in this class is they also teach students organization. And so they teach the students how to program reminders into their cell phones. That's also something I do with my students. I have my students set up Google Calendar on their cell phones. And so, for example, if they have a big project coming up, I show them how to set up the calendar to give them a 72-hour reminder, and students tend to like having this. I have students that are sometimes resistant to programming reminders into their cell phones, and they tell me, you know, that they just want to use an old-fashioned pencil and paper organizer. That is, of course, still an option, but I counter the students, and I tend to say, well, what happens when you lose that organizer? What happens if you leave it on the bus? Whereas if you have something in Google Calendar, it's backed up to the cloud in case you lose your cell phone or your other device. So that is sort of how they're structuring. Our fourth case study, this is teaching students, I'm sorry, Faith? Okay. Our fourth case study here, this is teaching students independent learning skills, and they are particularly targeting ESL students. And this is at a rural Arizona community college. They did not specify in the case study exactly where this is. So they start out and have the students meet face to face in the classroom, and it's really about getting the students comfortable with technology. If you've used technology in your classroom previously, you're probably aware that you get a very broad range of skills. I see the students who are probably a little stronger in technology than I am. You plug them into the computer, they know what to do, and they're good to go. On the other end of the spectrum, I also get students that aren't even sure how to turn the computer on. So, you know, they start with that face-to-face to sort of assess where the students are at. If you get those students with very basic computer skills, I do have a site to recommend, and this is called GCF Learn Free. So this is gcflearnfree.org. This is a free website where you can teach your students some very basic skills for computers. They have things as simple as, you know, how do you use a mouse? How do you use a keyboard? There's more advanced things you can see here where you can teach the students Microsoft Office. You teach them math through here. There's a lot that you can do here, but this is a really great site to start out with students who just don't have those really strong computer skills. And I'm a believer that that's going to be very useful for them in the job market if they can put on their resume these basic skills. This program provides individualized instructions. So they start out and ask the students, what do you want to learn? This idea that you're going to have better buy-in from the students if they have some control and some ability to direct what they're doing. In terms of communication, this group is much more Google heavy, as I tend to be as well. So they use Gmail for their email communication. Google Voice is a great option for mass text messaging, and then they're also using a program called Vocaroo for podcasts, and I might be mispronouncing that last one. Live Binders is the main classroom website, and there again, you can create something very similar at no cost through Google sites. This particular program is also using Play-Doh, and they're using some of the lessons specific to language exercises. They also represent a couple of free websites for listening and writing. They go through the History Channel and StoryCorps. If you haven't ever been to the History Channel's website, they have a lot of excellent resources. There's also another website for reading and writing I can recommend. It's through Stanford, and it is called Read Like a Historian. Gives access to some of the original documents in a historical context. So lots and lots of great free stuff out there. And then they just use a hodgepodge of websites for grammar, vocabulary, and language skill building. If you're not real familiar with websites to use in MDELT, so I'm here back on our web page. If you come down here and you mouse over in MDELT resources, we have a lot of free resources available for you. I particularly want to show you here the section free web. resources. We have these organized by category. I'll come down here and I'll click on English language learner resources. And you can see down here, these are some of the free things that the NM-DELT team has located. If you're trying to find something in particular, if you want some sort of specific function, you're more than welcome to reach out to a team member. So for example, here on the English language learner resource page, you can see Montserrat's contact information right there. She is very, very friendly. So I encourage you to reach out to her if you're needing some sort of support with these things. I am also happy to help you out. So our fifth case study here is about broadening academic horizons, and this is coming out of Pennsylvania. So their explicitly stated goal is to prepare students for the GED test. It sounds like they don't offer HiSET or anything else at this particular program. So upon enrollment, the very first thing students do is they train using core tools. Now they don't specify in the case study what they consider to be core tools, but I tend to think of things like Google Docs. Can the student use email? So kind of going in with an idea of what do you want students to be able to do? What kind of technologies do you want students to be able to interact with? And they do focus on the content areas that interest the student. So here again, giving the students some control over their education and empowering them to do some self-directed learning. Once again, they use the Moodle learning management system. It seems to be very popular. Khan Academy, that's supposed to say videos to explore content areas. You can go directly to Khan Academy's website. You can also go to the Khan Academy YouTube page. I personally tend to prefer Khan Academy's YouTube page because it seems to be a little bit lighter in terms of advertisements than their actual website. So something to think about there. Hippocampus is also a really great resource for videos. So something to think about. They use Adobe Connect and ScribeLink for synchronous instruction. There again, Google Hangouts is a really good resource for that. They use Screener and Camtasia to record asynchronous instruction. I tend to stick with Screencastify. Screencastify is a free one. I just find it very easy to work with, not real laggy or anything like that. So lots of free tools out there. And then they do Skype and email for communication there once again. So our sixth case study, that is expanding writing beyond GED preps, going a little bit deeper. So they have the students do both independent and collaborative projects. This piece I find particularly interesting. So they meet 4 days a week, and that's kind of unusual for my understanding of a hybrid format. Usually if you're doing hybrid or blended learning, the idea is to create a class that's more flexible for the student's schedule. So I find it very interesting to run a hybrid that meets so frequently, and I'd really like to know more about that beyond just the case study. They use Microsoft Front Page to differentiate instruction, and there again, you can do something very similar for Google Sites that you don't have to pay for the Microsoft product. They like to assess students' skill level. So for language skills, they use TABE as their assessment. For computer skills, they use North Star, the North Star Digital Literacy Assessment. That's a great free assessment to kind of get an idea of students' deficiencies when it comes to technology. And they use the Steckvon GED practice writing test to assess writing skills within their students. They have students do core grammar skill practice, and they do that through the Skills Tutor website. They email assignments to absent students. And this is an example of where I like a learning management system. If you have a learning management system, the information is just there. If a student's absent, they know to go. They know where to go to access this. I feel like emailing this kind of thing to students is a bit of an extra step that would just be creating more work for you. They use iPathways, that's online curriculum to differentiate instruction and provide tutoring at a distance. Definitely have some sort of plan for what students can do for tutoring if you're doing a distance learning option. Then they have teacher-created activities, which they do through Google Docs. There again, that's a similar program to Microsoft Word. They're also using Grammar Girl and the Purdue Online Writing Lab, Purdue OWL for writing resources. Great resource if you are not familiar with it. So I want to be sure and leave us plenty of time for questions here at the end. And so I notice I'm about 5 minutes away from my question piece. And so I want to look at technology rich writing for ESL students. I'm going to go through these just a little bit quicker. So this particular program, they have ESL skills embedded in every single class that they offer, which I find very interesting. I think that has potential for some really nice consistency as far as what the students can expect. This is a hybrid class, and so they meet in an actual computer lab. They do assignments through Skills Tutor, and here again, this teacher is not utilizing a learning management system. They're emailing assignments to students. They have a class webpage that coordinates the course, which, keep in mind, these are case studies, so I have a limited amount of information, but I find it interesting that they differentiate and have the webpage to coordinate the course, but assignments aren't necessarily through that webpage. So a little bit of confusion their system. They use Microsoft Word for basic grammar practice and sentence level writing, and they submit this through email. Here again, you could do that through, you could have the students email the assignment to you. You could also have them submit it through Google Classroom. There are some advantages for me, at least, in terms of organizing the submissions when going through Google Classroom that I think is a little superior to just plain old email. And once again, they're using email technique. So here we have our 8th case study. So this is a vocational education and ESL class, and we are looking at Fremont, California for this one. So this is a hybrid, and this piece I find very interesting. This program received a grant, and so they were able to purchase iPads and Chromebooks for their students. I know here in the state of New Mexico, it's such a it's so spread out. We have so much rural land that students having access to technology can be a bit of a problem. So it's an interesting idea to write a grant for that. I do want to come over here to a new tab and show you everyone on .org. This is a really nice website. This can help students to purchase technology. The last time I looked, students can get a tablet or a laptop for maybe about $150 through here. They can get access to affordable internet. The last time I looked in Albuquerque, if students qualify, they could get some good high quality broadband internet for about $10 a month. There are a few characteristics they look at. Not necessarily everyone will qualify, but please share this with your students. It's a really great resource. I've had students receive access to some technology tools pretty cheap through that website. Class. So again, this is a hybrid. They focus on oral communication, and they work collaboratively doing things like creating resumes, looking for job openings, and filling out job applications. It seems that in the 21st century, submitting job applications through pencil and paper is quickly becoming outdated. There are a lot of places that will only accept online applications, and so I think it's important to ensure that our students have the skills to apply for jobs in the 20th century. Outside of class, they focus on reading and writing proficiency, and they use the USA Learns website for ESL instruction. They use Rosetta Stone for low literacy students. And then they again have a website to coordinate the class activities, and they do that through a Weebly website. Here again, lots and lots of options for you to use. And apparently each student has an individual Weebly webpage, which I find very interesting, because it creates a bit of an online portfolio for the student at the end of the class. That's a very interesting idea. Another model of distance learning that is very popular is the Emporium model, and I will be presenting on the Emporium model here at 11 o'clock in about 20 minutes. So feel free to join us if you're interested in that. So are you experiencing information overload yet? I think it's highly likely that you are, because we just covered a lot in a short amount of time. So if you're not sure how you can determine what free resources are available for distance learning, check out our website. The DELT team has put in quite a bit of time trying to find things that are both free to use and also things like Play-Doh that are typically something you have to pay for, but you are able to get free access through the NMDELT website. So I would like to open up a little bit of time for questions and comments. You can ask questions through YouTube chat if you're watching this live. If you're watching a recording, or if you're not comfortable with YouTube chat, feel free to send me an email and I will try to help you out. So let's see, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. I think you need to mute yourself so I can ask it real quick.
Okay.
So we have a question coming in from Barb. She's asking, what are the benefits of using Google Sites in comparison to Google Classrooms?
Thank you. So Barb's question, the benefit of using Google Sites versus Google Classroom. I'll tell you, I've never actually used Google Sites for a specific class. In my opinion, I think Google Classroom is the superior way to go. I think there's an added level of security in terms of FERPA, because if you create a Google site, anybody's going to be able to go on there and access it. And I'm a little hesitant in terms of what are my students going to put out there that maybe should be private. Whereas Google Classroom, I can control that only I can see it, only my students can see it, and if you invite another co-teacher, they can see it as well. But there's just more control there. So I don't know that there is an advantage to using Google Sites. Some of these teachers that are using sites in their in these case studies, I wonder if they even know about learning management systems. I wonder if maybe they don't have access to these kind of things. So questions.
Yes, we have another question coming through, and thank you for that. I'm curious as to how many students utilize Google Classroom. The gentleman is asking, Haroon is saying he has students that attend at night, and 2 nights in the classroom is not enough for them. So he's wondering if you find, Cash, that students who want more class availability utilize the classroom more.
In terms of utilizing the classroom more, I'm not sure that I necessarily see that, but that may be more a result of how I have my classroom set up. More what I see those students who want extra instruction, I see them tending to gravitate to things like Ed Ready, to things like Career Ready 101, where we have that actual curriculum used in built in. Excuse me. I use Google Classroom more just to say, okay, here's your assignment for the week, here's your activity for the week, here are the minimum expectations that I have for you this week. week. And you know, sometimes students take things like Ed Ready and really run with it. We had a student a couple of weeks ago that was concerned about getting in trouble for spending too much time in Ed Ready. And so sometimes you see these students who are resistant. Maybe they have other things going on in your life, but on the flip side, there are times that I see students who are putting, you know, 30 or 40 hours a week in some of these programs. So I think that's more beneficial to them to have those outside programs rather than just Google Classroom. But there again, depending on how you use it, you might find some uses for Google Classroom in that capacity. Questions?
I don't see any more questions in the chat. If anybody has anything, please still feel free to add. We have a couple more minutes. While we're seeing if any other questions arise, I just want to make sure everybody was aware of that original link. I wonder if you could go to that slide, Cash,
Sure.
to make sure we've had you registered for this particular session. So in that case, we could have your emails and follow up with you in that way, or follow up directly with Cash. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that our next session coming up at 11 o'clock, we're going to have creating and using Google Forms, Docs, Sheets, and Slide with Cash in session A. And after our lunch, we'll go to session B and have Ed Ready implementations at 12 o'clock. So let's take a look and see if there's any more questions. Thank you for all of you watching. Cash, would you like to add anything as a farewell?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to those of you who are watching the recording. All of the presentations we're doing today are through YouTube Live. So as soon as we end them, recordings are available on the website, and you can use those links that you use to get into this. So for example, you are kind of torn between two sessions, just please be aware that they are all recorded. If you have any questions about best practice in distance learning, please feel free to just shoot me an email. If you go into YouTube and look up DELT webinars, I've also done an entire series on student engagement. It's just such a big topic. And right here, I want to point out my email address,cclifton4@nmdelt.org. Feel free to email me if you would like any support. Thank you all.
Okay, we had one thing more come in before we end. It's showing one of the participants tried to click on the link from the first slide, and it's saying it's not available. So I'm wondering if you could go back to that first slide. It's the tinyurl.com/delttvc 2017. So we're going to go ahead and put that link in the chat right now, and hopefully that will work for you. And any other questions? And Haroon, if you find that it doesn't work when you go to the link, you're welcome to email Cash or any other DELT team member, and we can definitely get back to you directly. Okay, we're working on posting that link. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for attending today. There's the link, and hopefully you'll find success with that. With that, we're going to close for this session, and we hope to see you in future ones. Haroon is saying that we need permission, so we're going to see about that. I think if you use your nmdelt.org email address and log in with that, you'll be able to access the form without problems. So I would say, Haroon, give that a try. And thank you very much, Barb, and for the others that I haven't recognized by name, we very much appreciate your attendance.